Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Temple City Council for Thursday, May 5th, 2016. Please rise as Mayor Pro Tem Russell Schneider leads us in the invocation, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Brian Chandler, Director of Planning.
Let us pray. Most gracious and heavenly Father, we bow before you just knowing that you are in control of our lives, in control of the city, and in control of this state. We ask your guidance and decisions we make tonight that best represents you first and then us later. Ask you to forgive us when we go out of your will and out of your direction, out of your way. We ask you to keep us in the right direction. We thank you for all that's represented here tonight and that you protect them and guide them and give them a safe trip home. We ask all this in your Son's precious name. Amen.
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 Please join me in reciting the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you both. Now is the opportunity for public comments. Citizens who desire to address the council on any matter may sign up to do so prior to this meeting. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. No discussion or final action will be taken by the City Council. First up is Mr. C.J. Grisham.
Been a while. How y'all doing? Y'all look great. I wanted to talk about the tattoo ordinance and basically urge this council to finally, once and for all, get rid of this ban on tattoos here for several reasons. One, we're losing revenue. We've got people who are here that can do a great job abiding by the law, abiding by health codes, and it can provide these services. Right now, what's happening is people are going to Waco, people are going to Killeen, people are going all over. This isn't the 80s where you have to worry about people using the same needle to tattoo many different people. There are laws in place about hygiene and health and all those kinds of things. So that shouldn't even be an issue. If it was an issue, then Killeen wouldn't be a problem with Killeen. Now I know some people have religious objections to tattoos. I do as well. Even though I have one, I believe that our body is a temple. But I want to tell you a little story for those that do have religious reservations about tattoos. In the book of Genesis, Adam was strictly forbidden to partake of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. And he did it anyway. Why did he do that? Because God gave him free agency. Now, he told them what was right and wrong, but he still let them choose for themselves. Now, think of that tree as getting a tattoo. It's no different. In my mind and in my religion and my religious beliefs, God has told me, your body's a temple. Don't get a tattoo. But he also gave me and all of us free agency to choose whether or not we want to get a tattoo. So I think by preventing the citizenry from being able to express themselves in whatever manner they want. And, this isn't like World War II or Vietnam where, this idea of tattoos only being on, the cursing sailors that have returned home with the naked women and the mermaids and all those kinds of things and biker bars. I mean, we're talking about lawyers, judges, politicians. There's no longer a taboo on getting tattoos. I'm willing to bet there's probably a lot of people in here, my age and older or younger, that probably have them themselves. But the bottom line is, if you believe in liberty, if you believe in the rights of people to choose their own fate so long as it doesn't affect other people, then you'll overturn the ban and allow Temple to create jobs by allowing them to create tattoo parlors that service the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grisham. Mr. Brent McCain, and forgive me, we actually are scheduled for a public hearing during when we actually hear these. So if you'd rather wait until then, you're more than welcome to come up now, or if you want to wait, you can do that as well. So Mr. Brent McCain.
He just stepped out, but he'll probably talk during public.
That's fine. We'll wait. Mr. Christopher Simmons?
Yes, sir. I will also wait.
Okay. Now we have a proclamation. It's Nurses Week. Do we have any nurses in the audience? Would y'all like to come up here? How are y'all doing? Good. Thank y'all for being here. Okay. Whereas the nearly 3.1 million registered nurses in the United States comprise our nation's largest healthcare profession, and the depth and breadth of this profession meets the different and emerging healthcare needs of the American population in a wide range of settings. Whereas since the inception of Scott and White Memorial Hospital and Clinic, a member of Baylor Scott and White Health, the role of nursing has been pivotal in clinic and hospital operations, as well as in fulfilling the mission to our community. Whereas today, more than 1,200 registered nurses, more than 300 licensed vocational nurses, and several hundred advanced practice nurses provide care to our patients across the organization in a multitude of settings. Whereas whether these nurses are practicing in one of the many primary care clinics, specialty clinics, procedural departments, emergency departments, operating rooms, or within the hospital, they are all committed to providing safe, compassionate health care for all patients. There is no doubt that health care is changing at a rapid pace, and nursing is prepared to meet the changing demands. Whereas the City of Temple, along with Scott and White Memorial Hospital and Clinic, a member of Baylor Scott and White Health, have declared the week of May 6th through 13th, 2016 as National Nurses Week with a theme of Culture of Safety, It Starts With You. Now therefore I, Daniel A. Dunn, Mayor of the City of Temple, Texas, do hereby proclaim the week of May 6th through 13th, 2016 as National Nurses Week in the City of Temple, Texas. And I encourage all citizens to join with me in honoring all of the registered nurses who care for us and to celebrate all of the accomplishments of all registered nurses and their continued efforts to improve our healthcare system. In testimony whereof, I witness my hand and the seal of the City of Temple, Texas, this the 5th day of May, 2016. Thank y'all so much. Would y'all like to say a few things?
Real quick.
Here, I'm going to hand that to you just so we'll have a recording of it.
So, again, thank you all so much, and we appreciate the proclamation. As I said, Temple Memorial alone has over 1,200 registered nurses. We also have several hundred additional registered nurses at McLean Children's and our continuing care hospital as well. That doesn't even account for the registered nurses in our community that are working, or the LVNs as well, that are working in home care, hospice, long-term care, nursing homes, etc., that are really the backbone of the healthcare system and pivotal to a community. We're quite fortunate to have our partners between Mary Hardin Baylor and our community colleges in developing the nursing profession to meet the needs as we go forward. The projected need for registered nurses, in particular, through 2020 is expected to go up almost 20%. And so we do strongly encourage folks that are getting their children prepared for careers to consider nursing as probably one of the most pivotal professions out there. I would say that the last thing that I would like to comment on would be the absolute value of nursing to a community and as a caring profession. While there's science behind what we do as registered nurses in providing evidence-based care to our patients and populations, we also know that at the heart of that, nursing is a calling, and we call that the art of nursing, making a difference every patient, every day. So we're very, very proud of our nurses, what they contribute to not just the organization, but the community at large. So thank you.
Now, I know that, thank you. Absolutely. Now, I know that we're going to present this to you next week as well on campus. Do you want us to go ahead and keep this for you? Are you sure? Okay, does everybody see that? Because, you know.
Take a copy with you just in case.
And Lynn, yes, I know. Annalyn Donnell, please get that for the record. It's not my fault if somebody forgets it. Thank y'all. Right. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. All items listed under this section are considered to be routine by the
Mayor.
city council. And, I am leaving off that, and I've actually looked forward to this. Item 4 is to receive an annual report regarding the Planning and Zoning Commission cases from the fiscal year 2014 through 2015 to include plat, zoning, code amendment, and overlay appeal cases. Mr. David Jones.
That was someone compete with a group of nurses and what they do with the Scott and Martin. You had to put me behind them, Brian. They do
I already-
a wonderful job.
I already forgot you once, so I'm sorry about that.
Good evening, council. I've got a few slides, and we're going to see if the slides and the notes match up here in just a second. I know we're short on time, but I do want to take a second, and Brian doesn't know I'm going to say this, but since he's been here, I want to compliment what he has done with you and the whole planning staff. I've been able to, I run a business. I understand coming in and have to get things set up. From our perspective, it has made a difference. And I do want to compliment the whole staff and the citizens. Y'all don't see that happening on a day in and day out basis. They're working very hard for you. And there's some volunteers on the P&Z board. I just happen to be the one this year that sits in the middle. But they're doing a good job, and they're working hard. We have some slides. The first slide, let's go to the next slide, please. There we go. This one is on population growth from 2007 up to 2015. We about a 2%. Upper 1% growth every year. That's a very nice, steady growth. And let's go to the next one. With this, last year, we had 21 total zoning cases, rezoning cases. They were all approved except for 2, and most of those were over in West Temple, where the growth is, off the 2305 area, back over and through there. The next one, please. On the platting cases, we have 48 subdivisions, 34 were residential, 14 were non-residential. And again, unlike the zoning cases, these zones, you can see, were from all over town, and there were a number out in the ETJ, which just shows the growth of Temple and how it's spreading. Next slide, please. Overlay appeals. We had 4 on the Highway 35, which y'all have seen, and 2 on the first and third overlay cases, and they were all approved except for one of them, and that was the Caliber collision sign. Next one. The next 3 are just pictures. They are very large projects that are going on here in Temple right now. This first one is going to be the Shops on the Hill Apartments across from Scott and White on 31st Street, and that's coming along. And that's going to be a 200-unit apartment project that is going to add to that part of the city right there. Next one, please. This one's the Westfield Master Plan out by North Belton Middle School, and very large project. This will be a 750-unit master plan and multiple houses along with commercial, and there will be trails and a linear park connection. So that's going to be a very nice place to live. One more. This is the Baylor Scott and White out north of the loop on the east side of Highway 35. It's going to be right at 160,000 square foot, currently under construction. And it will provide the supplies for the entire Baylor Scott and White system based here in Temple. So a wonderful location, moving semis back and forth and moving supplies back and forth. And then I believe the last case right here, what we saw compared to 14, 15, and then projected in 16 is very interesting. We saw a decrease in 15. What was that number? We saw a 13% decrease in 15 from 14. I'm not sure why. But what we are seeing right now is at a current rate for the year 16, there'll be a 26% increase. So there's a lot of construction happening. There's a lot of platting, zoning, building houses and apartments. Temple's growing. Temple's a very vibrant town, and I feel privileged to be able to be a part of it as a volunteer on one of the boards there. I'm also on another board, but I feel privileged to be a part of and contribute. That's the presentation, short and sweet. If you have questions, please ask them.
Any questions? Mr. Jones, thank you so much, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And we actually think Brian's pretty good, too. Yeah, very much so. Thanks so much. Now, we'll go to the consent agenda. All items listed under this section are considered routine by the City Council and may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by the council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any council member and will be considered separately. Council, this is item 5A through 5S. Are there any items that you wish to remove? All right, I'll entertain a motion on item 5A through S.
Make a motion for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. Item 6 on the regular agenda. First reading in a public hearing, consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a conditional use permit to allow a restaurant where less than 50% of the total gross revenue may be from the sale of alcoholic beverages with on-premise consumption on Lot 1, Block 1 of the proposed Highline Addition subdivision located on the north side of Scott Boulevard, west of its intersection with South 31st Street. Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Again, this item was before the Planning and Zoning Commission on April 4th, and it's scheduled for City Council's second reading on May 19th. Just some background information. This property was covered under Ordinance 2016 and was approved, as you may recall, back in February and known overall as the district. It was a mixed-use plan development in TMED with T4 and T5C underlying designations. Specifically, the request is for Rose's Cafe, and within the TMED district, a conditional use permit is required when on-premise sale and consumption of alcoholic beverages is requested. Again, this is going to be located on Lot 1 of the proposed Highline Addition subdivision. The plat is currently in review by the Development Review Committee, and City Council approval of that plat at this time does not appear to be necessary, but will be the final authority with the Planning and Zoning Commission. Just an aerial photo of the site. Again, Rose's Cafe is located here by the little yellow pinpoint. This is along Scott Boulevard and west of 31st, and again, the district being this larger undeveloped area. In terms of the conditional use permit process, two items impact this request, primarily Chapter 4 of the Code of Ordinances regarding alcoholic beverages. Requirements within this section of code have been met, primarily deal with the distancing requirements from sensitive uses such as a place of worship, public school, or a public hospital. UDC section 5.3.15 reiterates a lot of those same requirements, and again, requirements for that have been met. In terms of the zoning, again, the underlying zoning is TMED, T4, and T5C. The request is consistent with the underlying designation. Just some photographs, both of the site and surrounding area. The site, the district itself, is currently undeveloped. And to the north, again, areas that will contain future development within the district and residential development farther to the north. And again, the site is currently to the north is undeveloped. To the east is the Scott and White Hospital. Again, this also has the TMED designation. And to the west is the Candlewood Suites Hotel, and there are a number of scattered service uses. Primary zoning on those properties to the west are commercial and general retail. To the south is the Hilton Garden Inn Hotel, and again, additional commercial service and office uses, both with commercial zoning. As part of the zoning request. 46 notices were sent out to property owners. 4 notices were returned in agreement, and 3 notices representing 5 properties were returned in disagreement. Because the Lot 1 currently is not part of a formally recorded plat, we noticed from the larger area, which included the entire boundary of the district, and so it did pull in additional properties that would not have normally been included. So some of these notices were realistically, instead of being 200 feet, they were more like 500 to 1,000 feet. In terms of compliance, UDC Section 5.315, Chapter 4, and the compatibility with adjacent and anticipated retail and service uses all are compliant with the request. Staff is recommending approval, subject to 3 conditions. And briefly, the condition would be that the sale would be restricted to Lot 1, Block 1 of the Highline Addition subdivision. 2 would be compliance to Chapter 4. Again, that's alcoholic beverages within the Code of Ordinances and covers those requirements. And compliance with UDC Section 5.315 with some additional requirements, as well as a reiteration of the Chapter 4. As I mentioned earlier, on April 4th, the Planning and Zoning Commission did review and recommend 7-0 to recommend approval of the requested conditional use permit, subject to the 3 conditions as presented by staff. And that concludes my presentation. I am available should you have any questions, and the applicant's representative is also available here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Council, any questions? This time I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. There being no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, your pleasure on the first reading of item 6.
Motion for approval, item 6 is read.
Second.
Motion and a second, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn.
Aye. And I'll read both 7 and 8 together. First reading in a public hearing, consider adopting an ordinance amending Chapter 16 of the Code of Ordinances to delete Article 8, tattoo shops, and number 8, first reading in a public hearing, consider adopting an ordinance authorizing amendments to the Temple Unified Development Code, Article 5, use standards, deleting tattoo parlor as a prohibited use, allowing body piercing studios and tattoo studios by right in light industrial, heavy industrial, general retail, and commercial zoning districts, providing certain limitations. Article 6, special purpose and overlay zoning districts, prohibiting body piercing studios and tattoo studios in the Interstate 35 corridor overlay. And Article 11, definitions, providing definitions for body piercing studio, tattoo, and tattoo studio. Mr. Chandler.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This case was heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission on April 18th. And just to give you a little bit of background, Chris Simmons, who I believe is here in the audience and owns a tattoo studio in Morgan's Point, had come before council about 3 years ago and expressed a desire to open a studio here. He has since opened that studio in Morgan's Point. Yet he approached us again about a year ago, and I say us, that's legal, our city attorney Kayla and myself, and we agreed to meet with him. So we met with him in July just to take another look at our existing code requirements and to educate ourselves about the industry. And part of that included a site visit in October of 2015. So I've got a few slides in a second just to show you photos from our little field trip. Also, I think it's important to note that these code sections in this presentation and the proposed code amendments address a term called permanent makeup as well. And so I'll tell you a little bit about that. And we've had 3 inquiries in the past year about proprietors interested in opening establishments to provide that service or to locate an existing beauty salons as well. And so just to show you the tattoo studio in Morgan's Point, this is the front of it, Lucky and Love Studio, just typical strip retail center. And to the right, this is inside that facility. And this is Mr. Simmons here and one of his tattoo artists, Sandra. And just another corner of the facility. It's not a huge tenant space, probably less than 1,000 square feet. And just some of the artist stations here on the left. And to the right, this is their hand washing station. So we'll just go into the current standards that are primarily addressed in Chapter 16 of our Code of Ordinances, and in which tattooing or tattoo is defined, as well as tattoo operator, and tattooing is defined as means the practice of marking the skin with indelible patterns or pictures by making punctures and inserting pigments by someone other than a licensed physician. And a tattoo operator means any person other than a licensed physician who actually performs the work of tattooing. And Section 16-109, tattooing prohibited, states it shall be unlawful for any person within the city limits to operate a tattoo shop or engage in the practice or business of tattooing as a tattoo operator. So essentially, our current code limits tattooing to physicians and not to, and prohibits tattoo operators from providing that service. Then in our Unified Development Code, it's a little more cut and dry, just as tattoo parlor is a prohibited use in Section 511. Now, I mentioned permanent makeup, our current definition, and the state regulations in Chapter 146 of the State Health and Safety Code address permanent makeup, also known as micropigmentation or intradermal cosmetics. And then body piercing studios. We obviously presented to you all back in February 4th, I believe, in which this was not part of that presentation, but we've since included that since essentially the Chapter 146 of the Texas Health and Safety Code regulates this use as well. Not to mention the fact that our current code doesn't reference it at all. So without that definition of body piercing studios, essentially if someone were to come in and request to open one of those today, unlike tattooing studios, which is pretty clearly defined, the absence of any reference in our current code would classify this as a retail sales and service use other than listed, which essentially allows body piercing studios in all commercial and industrial districts with no locational standards. So a little more information about permanent makeup. Some of the potential proprietors have offered additional information, including that this is a service that's popular among radiation or chemotherapy patients. And just the photos to the right just show an example of a before and after, just related to eyebrows and providing that service. Also, as I mentioned, it falls under the definition for tattooing. And this service is often provided in beauty salons. And I'll show you a map towards the end of the presentation in terms of how that might impact, if these code amendments were adopted, existing beauty salons. We looked at a variety of other cities' regulations, peer cities, mainly in Central Texas, including Belton, Bryan, Georgetown, Killeen, and Waco. Belton allows them essentially along their major corridors in the commercial highway zoning district, no locational standards, just allowed by right. City of Bryan allows them in a variety of their commercial districts. However, they have very strict locational standards that they can't be within a mile of each other, and they can only exist within buildings between 3,000 and 5,000 square feet. Georgetown allows them in one of their more intense commercial zoning districts by right, and within downtown with a conditional use permit. Killeen allows them in one of their common commercial districts, B5, just by right. And City of Waco allows them in all commercial districts without any distance or locational standards. So just briefly, we'll go into talking about the Texas Health and Safety Code, Chapter 146. For tattooing and body piercing studios, an annual license is required, and that is for the studio itself. And so, of course, it has to be renewed every year. And initially, it triggers an inspection by the state. While they don't do annual, scheduled annual inspections, they have the authority to certainly inspect at any time. It also includes some very detailed sanitation standards. And then I've highlighted this next requirement of the licensing requiring zoning verification by the local municipality. And that's how we found out about these different inquiries, because they came to us. They were going through the licensing process. And so just important to note that in terms of enforcement and ensuring if these amendments were adopted, that is the trigger that all of them would have to come through us for zoning verification, and we could confirm compliance at that time. There's a registration process for the individual tattooists and body piercers, also requiring an annual renewal. And that also requires proof of completion of annual certified classes that address bloodborne pathogens, infection control, and aseptic techniques. So staff's recommendation is to just delete Chapter 16, Article 8, titled Tattoo Shops, provide new definitions for body piercing studio, tattoo, and tattoo studio, amend the Unified Development Code to allow tattoo and body piercing studios according to the following standards: allowing in general retail, commercial, light industrial, and heavy industrial zoning districts by right, with the following distance requirements: 1,000 feet between them, measured property line to property line, 1,000-foot distance from schools, private or public, per our definitions, prohibiting them within the I-35 corridor overlay, also prohibiting them in the strategic investment zone grant corridors. And this was based on feedback from our February 4th workshop before you at council. And then lastly, staff is also recommending that they include separate hand washing stations. And this is something that in our discussions with Mr. Simmons, he recommended, and that's something that we could also enforce through beginning with the state licensing process, but also building permit process. All right, so I want to show you a couple maps. On the left-hand side, these are the proposed zoning districts that would allow these according to the proposed code amendments. So the dark purple, of course, is heavy industrial, light purple, light industrial, the dark red being a commercial district, and then the lighter red is general retail. And then the cross-hatched areas, these are the I-35 corridor overlay and their sub-districts, and then the strategic investment zone grant areas as well. And so draw your attention to the right here in terms of what corridors are those for the CIZ, the strategic investment zones. Primarily, it's the first and third and fifth corridor, north and south, Central and Adams, east of General Bruce, downtown, and Avenue H. All right, so zoom in a little bit more to that same map. You may have seen some little yellow dots on the previous one and wondering, what is that? Well, these are the existing salons as licensed by the Texas Department of Licensing and Registration, TDLR, and there are 121 of them. And so what I think is important to note that if these codes were adopted, then essentially most of them would have the opportunity to add the permanent cosmetics or permanent makeup as an additional service, with the exception of those that are within a SIS corridor, which there are 13 of those, and about 19 of them are outside of one of the other base zoning districts, the general retail, commercial, light industrial, heavy industrial. Now that they could still apply for rezoning, but they would not be allowed by right according to our current zoning district locations, and if those codes or amendments are adopted. Keep in mind that they still would be subject to the distance requirements, the 1,000 feet between them and 1,000 feet distance requirements from schools. At their April 18th meeting, Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval as presented. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler. Council.
I just wonder, how is it going to be monitored, these individual places?
State of Texas to begin with, and Mr. Chandler,
You're exactly right, Mayor. That, yes, through the Texas Health and Safety Commission, because of the licensing and registration that's attached to their requirements, essentially we would be involved with the initial confirmation of meeting the zoning and locational requirements, and also the hand washing station. But beyond that, it's up to the operator to make sure that they meet the licensing and registration requirements.
Comments? I'll open both 7 and 8 public hearings. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Brent McCain, 1137 Trails End Road in Bruceville, Texas. And I would say that it would be great to have this tattoo shops available in Temple. They are, as he spoke of earlier, very well regulated with the Texas Health. And I've visited a number of shops in Waco and surrounding areas and found them to be very, very clean, very sterile, or as sterile as possible. And I would also encourage everyone to go visit. You saw the pictures of the shop in Morgan's Point. Go visit the shop, and you can see for yourself. The pictures really don't tell the whole story of how clean they are, the proper disposal method of the needles, the fact that needles are now the whole entire piece that goes in the tattoo machine is disposable. There's almost no autoclaving involved. Very strict regulations. So, anybody have any questions? I've got a number of artwork myself, so.
I think we're okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Christopher Simmons. I live at 2710 Primrose Trail in Temple, Texas. I'm also owner of Lucky and Love Tattoo in Morgan's Point. First off, I want to thank the City of Temple for taking these steps to start this process, and I would most specifically Ms. Landeros and Mr. Chandler for reaching out to us and allowing us to give our feedback and help as much as possible. But more than anything, I just want to help the city to understand, and hopefully the community too, that we are here to make a positive impact on this community, that some of the stigmas and stereotypes that have been associated with our business are not necessarily true, and we're very excited to be able to contribute to the City of Temple. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good evening. My name is Robert Brandenburg IV, address 11444 Stringtown Road, Temple, Texas. Been a Temple resident for over 20 years. 5 years ago, I opened a small business, a retail merchandising unit in the Temple Mall that carried body jewelry. Something we sought to do with that retail merchandising unit was provide a high-quality surgical steel jewelry to the customers that already had their piercings that wanted to get new and different designs. It wasn't long after that we began to carry actual tattoo supplies to provide for licensed tattoo artists, also seeking to carry legitimate, sterile, disposable equipment, as he spoke of, high-grade, professional quality ink. And we provide those to tattoo artists that come from Killeen and Waco and other surrounding areas. As we started that with Temple Mall manager Trish Lee, we wanted to actually one day expand that, and she sought to hopefully have a small body piercing studio right there in Temple Mall for just some of the level 1 simple cartilage piercings, eyebrow, nose, simple things like that, and that's something that she still supports. And just this past week, we've actually moved into an inline location, and we're poised and ready to be able to have that if the opportunity presents itself. Within that location, we carry clothing and other merchandise that is made and crafted right here in Texas. One line of clothing is actually owned completely by veterans, and they're right here in Texas as well. So we support the local business. I also own Peggy's Coffee House in the Temple Mall, where we have a live music venue and support local musicians. So we want to continue to see small businesses grow in Temple. We're poised and ready to offer the actual legitimate, sterile, and professional grade supplies to any of those artists that would open up shop here in Temple. And just ask you to strongly consider allowing that and allowing us to have a clean, comfortable environment there in the Temple Mall for those simple level 1 body piercings to be done. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
CJ Grisham, 4365 Airport Trail. Just a quick question. I was wondering if you could talk about what is the thought process behind the 1,000-foot rule from schools. I mean, are tattoo parlors a danger to our kids? What's the thought process to that?
Kayla, can you answer that?
Sure. I think it was just an intent to obviously safeguard areas around our schools. You know, there is still some stigma behind these types of businesses, so we wanted to present proposals that would help people feel comfortable with where they would be located. And so that's why we included not only the 1,000-foot distance requirements between the businesses, which would present clustering of businesses, but also the 1,000-foot distance requirement from the schools, just to provide that protective buffer and let people feel comfortable with what was being proposed.
Okay. I guess my only concern, but it's not a big thing, is I think that actually furthers that stigma when we're placating to it. But just a comment.
I think we had some discussion about that during our workshop session, and I think that if this were to move forward and pass, that this is something that the staff and applicants and everybody else has looked at and seen as a compromise if it goes through. Anyone else wishing to speak? All right, if not, I will declare the public hearing closed. Anybody else?
I have one question. I assume there's an age limit of who can receive?
18, I think. Is that?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
That is correct. Minors have to have consent of the parent, but yeah, so.
You'll get one.
I think so.
I've got a comment. We've addressed this subject for 12 years, since 2004, off and on, since I've been on the council, and it's gone back and forth. We've also had a lot of discussions about wine sales and alcohol sales and package stores. And as you all know, that went to the voters. And every time I go to our constituents about the tattoo ordinance, and most of them are in a disagreement. There are a few that are in agreement, and every time it brings me back to I believe the voters should make the decision, and not 5 men and women up here on the council, and I still believe that, and I think that as big a decision as this is, and I understand Mr. Grisham's and some of you others as far as small business. I have a small business myself, and I understand that. I understand we are losing some benefit to businesses, but still, the step here in Temple, I believe that I think it'd be a step that the voters would need to decide, and I wouldn't feel comfortable deciding that myself.
Comment?
Well, I just want to echo Councilman Snyder's comments. I've not received, there's not an issue that I've received more phone calls on than this one in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And so there is a concern, on both sides of the subject, and I think it only makes sense to, on something especially this potentially controversial, to bring it to a up or down vote.
So I have to say that maybe the only time that, and this is a credit to you, Mr. Simmons, maybe the only time I've changed my mind on anything in recent memory was maybe my love of avocados now. And, I've been thinking about this for a long time. And when I was in Councilmember Davis's, Councilmember Davis's position, I had a lot of people when this first came up that were against this. And as I have started thinking about it, we can't dictate good or bad taste. If somebody wants a tattoo, that's not our decision to decide whether somebody wants a tattoo or not. This goes back to, in my opinion, Bill of Rights 101. And it's, whether I think it's art or if anybody else thinks it's art, that's not my place to say. What I do know is that there are a lot of people that, whether they were painting pictures or writing books over the years, that were told that they couldn't do that, and they couldn't write and they couldn't paint, and people couldn't write or see what they did. And if you don't want to see it, you don't have to. If you don't want to get a tattoo, you don't have to. But my position is that as a city council, we hear a lot from people that don't like what we're doing. We don't always hear from people that would be appreciative of something that we do. And while I think that the idea of having an election to decide whether or not somebody wants to practice what they perceive to be an art that is legal from the state of Texas, that's not what we do. And I don't think that, and I'm going to tick a lot of people off, and I'm going to sit there and I'm going to have calls, because this is going, probably like old Sunday school teachers are going to say something to me about this. But it's not my position to dictate, like I said earlier, what someone thinks good or bad taste is. And I support this because if you take away the possible economic gain, which I'm sure that there is something, this is freedom of speech, this is freedom of expression, and this is not something that I'm comfortable with saying no to. And I was thinking about this earlier, and I'm sorry, I'll get off my soapbox in a little bit. A couple months ago, I went out to eat with some friends and family, and I was accosted by a gentleman. I went outside to talk to my dad on the phone, and somebody accosted me outside a restaurant to tell me, because we as the city council, we had voted to approve a zoning change to put in a strip center 2 years ago, that all of the traffic and all of the growth on West Adams was somehow my fault. And I sat there and I looked at him, and I remember the case because there were, let's say that there were 7 or 8 people that spoke against it, and it was directly around this place that would have, the only thing that it would have been was some kind of commercial or general retail development. And it's one of those things that you sit there and you think about, and it bugs you that somebody would blame every ill that happens in a city because you made one decision. And for everybody that looks at tattoo salons or tattoo shops that says that somehow we're going to degrade as a society because we allow people to have a tattoo studio in town, I don't think that's going to happen. And just like you can blame a lot of stuff on me, but you can't blame Little Caesars going in on Adams. You can't blame growth and expansion of a city. And this is one of those things that this isn't 25 years ago. This isn't 10 years ago. But this is just a natural progression of things. Okay, I think my 3 minutes is up.
I did want to note, I think this is the first time we've mentioned possibly letting something like this go to voters. As you all know, the process for that is an initiative process. And our charter actually does not allow initiative processes for zoning amendments. So it would not, it would be possible to start an initiative to amend what is in Chapter 16, but the initiative process does not allow amendments on the zoning side.
So what are you saying there? I mean, so you can't go to the voters with this like wine and beer sales or wine and alcohol sales?
That's actually, I actually believe that's more of a state law process. And so in this situation, you would be asking, I mean, voters would be, or citizens would be asking through an initiative to, they could ask to delete that article from Chapter 16. But we also have in our UDC, as Brian mentioned, in Article 5, we actually have specific language that prohibits tattoo parlors in addition to what we have in Chapter 16. And, you know, you could, even if you got rid of Chapter 16 and arguably allowed that use, then you allow it in the retail services other than listed, which would be more zoning districts than what we're proposing tonight, and without the distance requirements.
I think, although personally I don't have tattoos, I'm not really in favor of them, but I think, you know, we need to look at free enterprise and our community, and what that brings to our decisions is, you know, we can't dictate if somebody wants to open a flower shop or whatever. It's a free enterprise. And so with that, I'm glad that we've got some limitations that would make me feel more comfortable as a mother or grandfather to know that my 14-year-old couldn't do that. But when he's older, I can't dictate to him what he can do after he's 18. So with that, I think it's important that we support our small businesses and free enterprise.
Mary Dunn, I agree with you that we are not charged as a city council to decide how someone expresses themselves, and I 100% agree with that. What we are charged with as council members is to make decisions that guide our city in a way that we believe it should go. So I respect. I've seen personally some beautiful tattoos. I respect the artistry. I respect the person that feels strongly enough about something to mark their body with that. I have no problem with that. To me, this is more of an issue of where we are going with Temple. Your comment is it's a move forward. I don't agree with that comment. So that's all.
And I respect that. Thank you. I think that we probably the number one thing that we have is to respect we've taken an oath to respect the Constitution and I think that this is what we're trying to do here, and you weren't even listening to me.
Kayla, time out a little bit here. So you're saying if it's not decided in this setting, this is the only place it can't go to the voters, is what you're saying, to allow tattoo studios in Temple. Is that what you're saying?
It depends.
Because it was my understanding that we, over time, there were two ways to do this: is to go to the voters, or to make the decision. We've talked about that numerous times since I believe that I've been on here. That's the way I've understood that. So this is new to me.
I think we ultimately all go to the voters.
Well, I understand, but I'm talking about wine sales and package stores. Okay, it's on the voters. Although we didn't feel comfortable making that decision, and that's how it took place. And there's two processes to that. You have a petition signed by ever how many names, or you can actually put it on a ballot. That's the way I understood it. So obviously I'm wrong.
Well, again, I think, and I was not here when we did the beer and wine sale, so Jonathan can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's a state law process to go to the voters for that particular issue. It's not anything set out in it's not something that's in our code that was required. But what I'm noting is that for an initiative process, if a citizen wanted to start a petition to take a proposed ordinance to council through initiative, in the last round of charter amendments, we added language that limits certain instances where that can happen. And one of those instances is zoning amendments. So a citizen could start an initiative to delete Article 8 out of Chapter 16 because that's not a zoning amendment. And that would take out that language. But the issue is that we have specific language in our Unified Development Code that specifically prohibits tattoo parlors. And so you couldn't start an initiative process to make the type of zoning amendments that we're suggesting tonight. Just from that one process, I'm saying, is limited that way.
So is there an opportunity to do that at all? Are you saying yes or no? You said maybe.
Just to give it to the voters, we could call an election for the voters to consider these specific changes. Have we done that before?
Not since I've been here, but we could look into it.
I mean, my thought is it's, the initiative process is that opportunity to go to the voters on that type of issue. Jonathan, jump in if you think differently.
I think Kayla's right. I mean, we did amend that particular section last time, and I think that is what she's describing to you. The only other thing I could maybe ask you is whether is there a possibility to do, under that referendum, to do a non-binding referendum to voters under the charter?
Could look at that some more. That's a possibility. But I mean, it's not a comparable situation to the beer and wine sales. I don't believe, because that's a state law process.
I think to add to what some of the conversation is, I've had many comments just when I run into people around town, or phone calls or whatever, even as I was walking into the building today. And the people who address me personally have been unanimous that they do not want a tattoo parlor in Temple.
Council, any other comments or questions?
I do want to emphasize that, as Brian mentioned, body piercing studios would already be allowed under that one category in our use table, and they're allowed without the distance requirements. So if you do not vote to approve item 7, which is still leading Article 8 out of Chapter 16, I think that kind of closes the discussion on item 8 with regards to tattoo studios. However, if you had the desire to place those limitations on body piercing studios, that would still be available, if that makes sense.
Is it proper to make a motion to table this so we can have further discussion? I think it's serious enough to warrant that and look at what other options there might be. And if so, I'll make that motion.
Have a motion, is there a second? On items, is that for item 7? Okay, and then we'll need to do item 8 as well. I have a motion to table item 7. Any other motions out there? All right. Item 7 dies for lack of a second. And I'll entertain a motion on item 8. Item 8 dies for lack of a motion. Item 9, consider adopting a resolution authorizing a construction contract with TTG Utilities LP of Gatesville for a lump sum price totaling $308,527.30 for the construction of the Tarver sidewalk.
So we recently opened bids on the Tarver sidewalk extension. Shown here is the red arrow is depicting where we would kind of the general area. These sidewalks would extend from South Pea Ridge near the school and complete sidewalk extension all the way along the north side of Tarver Drive with an 8-foot sidewalk, concrete. Just wanted to let you know that we are recommending award of the low bid, and here's where that falls with respect to the other bids and the engineer's OPC. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilor, are there any questions on item 9? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion for approval, item 9.
Motion is second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn.
Aye. Item 10, consider adopting a resolution authorizing a construction contract with R.T. Schneider Construction Company for the construction of the Tarver Drive extension in one of the following amounts. A, in the amount of $664,286.50 for construction of the Tarver Drive extension, which includes the base bid and add alternate 1. Or B, in the amount of $1,676,725.90, which includes the base bid, add alternate 1, and add alternate 2. Mr. Bond.
And this was only on for voting purposes, so Don can go through the presentation if you need him to.
I think we discussed this upstairs, and it was recommended that I was 10B. And I would entertain a motion on item 10.
Make a motion to approve item 10B in the amount of $1,676,725.90.
Second.
Motion is second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Abstain.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn.
Aye. Number 11, consider adopting a resolution authorizing a construction contract with TTG Utilities LP of Gatesville for the lump sum price of $5,437,983.59 for the construction of the Avenue U and 13th Street connector. For voting purposes, and I would entertain a motion on item 11.
Motion to approve item 11.
Second.
A motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Abstain.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn.
Aye. Item 12, consider adopting a resolution pursuant to Chapter 2206 Government Code 2206.053, finding that a .896 acre portion of the property located 1002 Old Waco Road, Temple, Texas 76502 is necessary for the extension of Tarver Drive to Old Waco Road and authorizing the use of eminent domain to condemn the property.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and council members, at this time, staff is actually asking the council to table this item, as this morning the staff and property owner were able to come to an agreement subject to council approval on the 19th. So you will see that item on the 19th before you.
Thank you, Jim. We have a request to table. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion for the table.
Second.
A motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn.
Aye. And item 13, consider adopting a resolution pursuant to 2206 Government Code 2206.053, finding that portions of 7 properties situated in the Nancy Chance Survey, Abstract 5, and located along Old Waco Road, Temple, Texas 76502, are necessary for the expansion of Old Waco Road and authorizing the use of eminent domain to condemn the properties. Jim?
Thank you, Mayor. Council members, this item before you is in regard to the expansion of Old Waco Road, Outer Loop Phase 3B. An item before you earlier today, item E, was for the acquisition of these properties up to a certain dollar amount, giving staff that threshold, and we appreciate your approval of that item. So first I want to give a basic overview of the project, which I'm sure you all are very familiar with. Phase 3 of the Outer Loop, also known as Old Waco Road expansion, runs from Adams Avenue in West Temple, just down south of Jupiter to a drainage channel down there. Here's another image, an aerial image of Phase 3 of the project. As you can see, this is an old image. There's no Walmart there, which would be on the right side of the image on the north end. Phase 3A, which was accelerated, is the area to the north and to the right of that red line, and what we're talking about today is Phase 3B to the south or the left of that red line in the division. So the project is the expansion of Old Waco Road from a drainage channel just to the north of Brandon Drive, which is the end of the current Phase 3A, to a point 300 feet south of the drainage channel to the south of Jupiter. I will show you another image in a minute of the area in question. So the design required of Phase 3B required the acquisition of right-of-way from 25 different properties, portions of those properties. 16 of the properties were acquired at the same time as Phase 3A, but then Phase 3A was accelerated, and so that left 9 remaining properties that the city needed right-of-way from in order to complete the project. The agreements were reached with 2 of the property owners, and those acquisitions were approved April 7th meeting by council, and the city has closed on the acquisition of those parcels. The city has also received counteroffers from 5 of the remaining 7 properties for the total of 9. Here is an image, an aerial image of the 25 different properties that the city required right-of-way from for the project, and the 9 that are identified on the map here are the 9 properties that are part of this phase of the right-of-way acquisition. I will note the one that's labeled number 5 is actually in the scope of Tarver, the Tarver extension, which we just mentioned before we came to the agreement on, and so that's why it goes to number 10. Identified in yellow here are the two properties that council approved the acquisition of. back on April 7th. And I actually identified in blue here are two properties that the staff has come to an agreement with the property owner on in the course of the last week. Accordingly, staff will be asking you to amend the motion, or to include language for use of eminent domain for 5 properties, not the 7 that was listed in the agenda. Those 5 properties are identified in orange, the orange numbers here, and I will run through their necessity of each, and the necessity of each. Is this the right presentation? Okay. The necessity of each moving forward, and why the staff is asking for the authority to use eminent domain. So I'm sorry, this is the wrong presentation. If you wouldn't mind, if I could pull up the right one.
He's flustered after the tattoo vote.
Yeah, that's right.
Anybody want to talk while we're waiting?
Don't take any votes you're not supposed to.
I'm not even, nobody look at me.
I'll look at you.
Shake your head. Already gotten in trouble once today.
Good now. I apologize for that. Yeah, one too many.
Jim, you know that we don't have to start all over.
I'm just kidding. So here's the language of the agenda item. As you can see, it's moved from 7 to 5. I'm going to run through the project summary. The presentation summary for this one is project overview, the necessary properties, and the request to use eminent domain for each property, at status of the negotiations, why we're requesting to use eminent domain. And then I will run through a basic overview of the condemnation process moving forward, as it's a process that the city rarely follows and reluctantly follows. Skip these. And here we go. Okay, so starting from the south, the first property that's included in this agenda item is 1207 Old Waco Road. It's a little over 5 acres, zoned agriculture. The acquisition is just under 3/10 of an acre. The only improvements included within the acquisition are fencing, power poles, and actually not noted on here is a well that's not in use currently. This is another image of the right-of-way to be acquired. So the necessity of the use of eminent domain, a little bit of a background in how we got to this position and why the staff is asking you to authorize the use of eminent domain for this property. The first offer was made in March 9th. An extension was granted for a counteroffer. A counteroffer was received by the property owner, and staff has continued to negotiate with the property owner. Including the staff presented a new revised offer, and then the landowner has submitted a counteroffer this morning. However, the city will be sending a final offer tomorrow. If the property owner and the city are unable to reach an agreement, it's still, as you can see by those numbers, we're still pretty far apart. And if we're unable to reach an agreement, we're asking for the authority to use eminent domain to let special commissioners appointed by a judge determine the appropriate value for the property. Property number 2 is the property just to the north. Again, agricultural land, almost 28 acres. It's vacant land. There's a home on an adjacent property. The acquisition is just over 8/10 of an acre, and the only improvements within the acquisition are fencing. An image showing the property and the acquisition is here, and explain the process on this property, how we got here. Again, the city made an offer based on the appraised value back in March with an extension given to the property owner to submit a counteroffer. Counteroffer was received, and staff has continued to negotiate with the property owner, including delivering a revised offer again, to which the landowner submitted a new counteroffer, but the parties are still very far apart, and so staff is again asking for the authority to use eminent domain to go to condemnation and let special commissioners appointed by a judge determine the value if we can't come to an agreement. The third property is identified as number 4. It's 6914 Jupiter Drive. The whole property is just over half an acre, and there is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home on the property, as well as some storage sheds and storage buildings. Within the acquisition, which is 0.17 acres, there is the storage building and a couple of pecan trees. However, the home will not be impacted. I will note that this is the storage building here that is within the acquisition that there's been some disagreement over the value on. And here are a couple more images of the inside of the building. This is a site plan for the property. As you can see, the storage building in the top left corner of the property will be included within the acquisition. However, the home will not, and the city staff does not intend to demolish the home or require relocation of the property owners. However, because the roadway will be close to the home, the city has included in its offer offer price equal to the diminished value of the home. So therefore, essentially the whole value of the property, as is required by law. So regarding the necessity of the use of eminent domain, we made our first offer, city staff, back in March based on the appraised value, including at the value of the whole parcel. And again, an extension was granted. And however, as of today, no written counteroffer has been received. However, a verbal counteroffer was provided by the attorney for the property owners. Unfortunately, again, the city and the city staff and the property owners are very far apart, and we will continue to negotiate. But city staff is seeking the authority to use eminent domain to go to a condemnation hearing. If the city's latest offer, which was submitted delivered on May 3rd, which we haven't received a response yet, is rejected by the property owner. That process, I will explain in a minute, can take up to 6 months, so that's why we're seeking the authority now, and we will continue to negotiate with both the property owner's attorney and as necessary, and but we're seeking to move forward so we can keep the construction timetable here. The fourth property is identified as number 6 on that overall map. It's the neighboring property at 6917 Venus Drive. Just under half an acre, again, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, a little bit larger, over 2,100 square feet. There is also a 600 square foot shop in the back of the property, identified here, where the property owner operates an auto repair business. The acquisition is 0.161 acres, and the home will actually be bisected by the acquisition, as is demonstrated on this overall site plan here. Accordingly, the city made an offer on March 4th for the appraised value of the whole property, not just the acquisition, due to its diminished value, and because staff believe and the appraiser believe that that's just compensation. The owner provided a verbal counteroffer. However, no written counteroffer has been received, so staff provided a final offer back on April 8th and met with the property owner. However, no written counteroffer has been received or acceptance, and it is unlikely to have an agreement with the property owner on this property. Staff will continue to negotiate with the property owner and reach out, and has continuously reached out. However, at this time, it's looking like special commissioners, appointment of special commissioners, and the use of eminent domain may be necessary. The last property is identified as 800 Old Waco Road. It's a vacant lot at just over half an acre. The acquisition is 0.186 acres, which is about a third of the lot. That's identified on this aerial image here. The offer, again, made to the property owner was the appraised value for the whole parcel, not just the acquisition. The staff recognized the diminished value of the remainder parcel. The property owner did submit a written counteroffer. However, it was there was a large difference between the city's offer and the property owner's counteroffer. Staff made a final written offer to the property owner, and increased significantly. However, the property owner rejected that offer and is seeking to go to condemnation if council so authorizes today. Agreement appears unlikely. So agreement with these 5 property owners appear uncertain at this time, and we're going to, as I mentioned, staff will continue to negotiate. However, in order to meet some of the construction timetables that we discussed before and that have been presented to the public, staff is requesting the use of the authority to use eminent domain if necessary, if the parties are unable to reach an agreement. As I mentioned, that can take up to 6 months, which is why we don't want to delay the process and construction moving forward, which is why we're seeking that authority today. So just a little overview on if council grants the authority to use eminent domain, the city and we parties are unable to reach an agreement after that final offer expires, which is usually 2 weeks after the final offer. The city would file a petition for condemnation, and the judge would appoint 3 landowners, special commissioners. They hold a hearing and they determine the value of the property, and then the city can take possession of the property once that award of money has been deposited with the court. And if the landowner or the city object to that value as determined by the commissioners, we can proceed to a jury trial. But the important point is to move forward to that commissioner's hearing in order to be able to gain possession of the property so that construction can proceed. So I'm available if you have any questions about the process or the property in question here. Again, this is the overall map that's shown here, and the 5 in orange are the properties we're seeking the authority to use eminent domain on. And again, I would remind council that there is a special motion language that I believe you have in front of you, which I apologize is really long, but it's required under Senate Bill 18 in the property code, or in the government code. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Council, any questions? If not, I will get out the straws here. I'll entertain a motion on item 13, and as Jim said, there is language that we do need to read in if that's your desire.
Okay. I move that the City of Temple approve resolution number 2016-8142-R and authorize the use of the power of eminent domain to acquire fee simple title to portions of 5 properties situated in the Nancy Chance Survey, Abstract 5, Bell County, Texas, and located along Old Waco Road, Temple, Texas, for the expansion of Old Waco Road. The descriptions of the 5 properties to be acquired are as follows, and the record vote shall apply to all units of the property to be condemned. First, an approximately .298 acre tract of unimproved land situated in the Nancy Chance Survey, Abstract 5, embracing a portion of the remainder of a called 5.5 acre tract, conveyed to BLRL Investments, LLC, Series J, in document number 2014-00035073. Official public records of real property, Bell County, Texas, otherwise known as a portion of the property located at 1207 Old Waco Road, Temple, Texas 76502. Second, an approximately .804 acre tract of unimproved land situated in the Nancy Chance Survey, Abstract 5, embracing a portion of a called 28.788 acre tract, conveyed to Prentice Richard Lewis in volume 1028, page 495, deed records of Bell County, Texas, otherwise known as a portion of the property located at 6819 Jupiter Drive, Temple, Texas 76502. Third, an approximately .170 acre tract of land situated in the Nancy Chance Survey, Abstract 5, embracing a portion of the remainder of a called .66 acre tract, conveyed to James M. Urchel in volume 2004, page 659, deed records of Bell County, Texas, otherwise known as a portion of the property located at 6914 Jupiter Drive, Temple, Texas 76502. Fourth, an approximately .161 acre tract of land situated in the Nancy Chance Survey, Abstract 5, embracing a portion of the remainder of a called .547 acre tract conveyed to William Bolding and wife Shannon Bolding in Volume 2448, page 40, Official Public Records of Real Property, Bell County, Texas, otherwise known as a portion of the property located at 6917 Venus Drive, Temple, Texas 76502, and 5th, an approximately .186 acre tract of unimproved land situated in the Nancy Chance Survey, Abstract 5, embracing a portion of the remainder of a called .632 acre tract conveyed to Leslie C. Wade and wife Josephine Wade in Volume 1478, page 74, Deed Records of Bell County, Texas, otherwise known as a portion of the property located at 800 Old Waco Road, Temple, Texas 76502.
I have a motion.
Second.
Paragraph. Did you give us a second?
Yes. Do I have to read it again?
I don't think so. We have a motion and a second on item 13.
For record purposes, that was really perfect. But for the record, on the third tract, it was volume 2004, page 569 in the deed records.
Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. That was almost longer than the meeting itself. And Jim, you can do that for like the next couple of months, because we used to let Brian mess up on things too periodically, but then his new wore off. Speaking of new wearing off, kidding, because you've been around for a very long time. It would be difficult for me to abstain from saying anything at the end of this, but Mayor Pro Tem Schneider, since 2004, you have diligently represented the people of District 4, and you've diligently represented the people of Temple, and I just want to thank you for your service. For the past 6 years, I have considered it an honor and a privilege to work with you. And while we might not have always agreed on everything, we've always gotten along. And I think that says a lot for our city and a lot for our council. And so I want to thank you for your service, and I wish you good luck in what lies ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Gonna miss you. Thanks.
Thank you, Russell.
You bet.
Yeah.
Russell, I'd also like to say something similar, that for these 12 years that I've had a chance to work with you, you've been a very dedicated public servant. You've had very strong opinions. You've never been shy about sharing those. And as the mayor said, maybe we all haven't always agreed on anything, but one of the things I really want to compliment you on is the fact that you do really stand very hard on your principles, and when we made a decision, even if you didn't agree with it, that was a decision that you supported because it was made by the whole council. And I really have always appreciated and respected that, and I thank you again, and I look forward to your friendship in the future.
Thank you. I had a little bit of concern. We talked about tattoos. We talked about eminent domain, and we had 13 items on the list, so I was a little bit hesitant to show up today, but it's been a pleasure and an honor to serve, and I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
I want to thank you too, Russell. Thank you for your leadership, and I want to congratulate you for knowing so much about GASB. Never seen any council member that cared as much about it, but seriously, thank you for your leadership and what you've done for Temple.
Favorite book as well.
Great Gatsby.
Great Gatsby.
Thank you, Russell. Would you like to adjourn?
I would love to adjourn. This meeting is adjourned.
All right.